Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome to the Wine with Jimmy channel. Delighted to have you on board. This is a wine educational channel which is designed to really help those of you getting really stuck into your wine studies for specific wine qualifications. And this video is no exception. This is a video designed for those of you studying your WSET Level 4. That is the all-important and challenging diploma. This video is on southern Italy. Italy's split into three areas, really, the north, the centre and the south. And this is on Series 1, Campania, out of 5 series. And Campania is split into 7 parts. We are on part 3 here, looking at Aglianico and its appellations. Parts 1 through to 3, this video, is available as free content, but parts 4 through to 7 will only be available as exclusive content on my e-learning portal. That's over at winewithjimmy.com. So we're going to start talking about Aglianico through its history, through its etymology, its key characteristics, and then where we find it, what key appellations that we find Aglianico. It is one of the most interesting grapes of southern Italy, southern mainland Italy, with an extensive history behind it. And it's been lauded as kind of the Barolo of the south of Italy, not necessarily in terms of its style, but of its importance. So let's go through a little bit of history. And this is really where we're finding out about this variety, about what was believed of Aglianico for many centuries, but now what is proven about really where it comes from. So first of all, on the basis of quite arguable Greek etymology, the naming of Aglianico, many authors have suggested that it was introduced by the Greeks when they began to colonize southern Italy, when the ancient Greek cities came across to places like Sicilia and southern mainland Italy. The supposedly Greek origin of Aglianico dates back to the late 16th century, when the Naples scholar Giambattista della Porta, who you see in this sketch on this slide, tentatively identified the Helvola grape variety mentioned by Pliny the Elder with the hypothetical Hellenico or Hellenic grape. So what we mean by that is that this author, Giambattista della Porta, linked Helvola to Aglianico. Helvola came from Greece, and he linked these two together. And this is where the shortcut of Aglianico coming from Helvona and then meaning Hellenic. So it was assumed that Aglianico came from Hellenico, meaning a grape variety from Greece. And it's been pretty much blindly assumed and adopted as fact for many centuries, since the 16th century. However, this etymology is in fact quite dubious, and there are some major concerns and uncertainty of it because of a number of facts. Let's go through those. First of all, Helvola, which it's been linked to in Greece, in fact, was known to make a white wine, whereas Aglianico, as we know, produces red wine from black grapes. Linguists, and I'm no expert, but linguists have actually argued, and they've established, that it is impossible to actually derive the name Aglianico from Hellenico in terms of linguistics. Now, it sounds quite similar, but in fact, it isn't possible to derive it. And then in Pliny the Elder's and other Roman authors' works, the adjective that was used to indicate Greek origin was Gracchus and never Hellenicus. So that's not least because the adjective simply didn't exist at that time as well. Also, no Roman author ever used the name Hellenic grapes, but always Greek grapes, because the concept of Hellenism, meaning from Greece, came into use really towards the Renaissance time in Italy, and was not around during the Roman the Roman time. So there's a lot of arguments against that Aglianico is a Greek origin grape derived from Greek grapes. So it's interesting to discuss that initially. So what do we think it really is about then? Well, we know that the name Aglianico most likely derives from the Spanish llano, which you'll see here, which means plain. And that's since the Spanish have a huge influence on southern Italy, with the Bourbon dynasty, of course, establishing the Kingdom of Sicily, and eventually, of course, that being the Kingdom of Two Sicilies, occupying southern Italy with Naples. And that's around the 15th and 16th centuries. So we also have the Spanish double L-A is pronounced glia in Italian. Thus, Aglianico would be the grape of the plain, which brings to mind its old dialect name, which is Aglianica or La Glianica, which is most likely where Aglianico then comes from. So really, it's from here. It's from Campania, named probably by the Spanish, meaning a grape of the plains. Now, we know that Aglianico is grown on plains, but it's probably most successful on hillsides. Found, of course, in areas like Taurasi and places like Velture down in Basilicata. But this is what we think is the most likely sort of history for its etymology. DNA profiling, which has also been, of course, widely adopted in the last 20 to 30 years, has shown that Aglianico is also not closely related to any Greek variety, any modern Greek variety. A lot of work from Attilo on this. It is also shown that Aglianico is closely related to many varieties cultivated in Campania or Basilicata, in particular a variety called Aglianicone, which Aglianico could be a parent of. When you have such genetic diversity in relations within a localized area, such as the region of Campania, it would then be quite prudent to say that it's actually from this area. It's likely to come from this area. Remembering also that when the Greeks landed, the different factions of the Greek cities landed in southern Italy, their ships landed on shore. All of them started to come out, and many of them exclaimed that this was a land of vines. They called it Onotria. They loved this land of vines, which also tells us that there were many, many vines already in existence here, probably cultivated by Etruscans, who then really sort of schooled a lot of the tribes around this area, the Italic tribes, the Samnites, the Piceni, and so on and so on. Some key information about this variety. Aglianico, as previously mentioned, is a black grape variety. It is an early budder, so it can be prone to problems with spring frost, which of course is not the world's biggest issue down in southern Italy. It is a late ripener, so it has therefore a very, very long season. It needs a long season to fully ripen. That's mightily important. It needs that warmth. It really does produce a lot of tannic structure during its summer months, which then need to be polymerized in the late autumn. So it needs a very long season to really properly polymerize those tannins. Otherwise, you're going to find extensive kind of astringency with this grape variety. It's also, and by the way, with that late ripening, sometimes into November, which is quite crazy. It's a vigorous variety and it can yield quite sizably. Remember, its etymology does come, we think, from a grape of the plains. So it's probably quite high yielding from areas like that. And if quality is to be really sought after, then curbing the production, restricting the vigor is important via site location, soil, geology, but also human intervention as well. It's prone to things like botrytis, and that's through the late rains that Campania can actually quite suffer badly. Certainly, remember when it gets picked in October, potentially into November. Most commonly trained via cordon spur and cane pruned with VSP at medium densities, and sometimes enabling mechanization in areas where, of course, the land is flatter. Okay, so what is Aglianico like as a style? Well, the wines typically are towards pronounced in intensity, with things like red plum, with things like blackberry as well. Often you can find, with a bit of bottle age, the dried fruits, dried cherries, cranberries coming through with this wine style. Expect high tannin, expect high acidity, which typically are softened with age. It's a wine, remember, which has been classified as the Barolo of the South. So one of the concepts which people have given it this moniker is actually because it needs a lot of time to soften its quite powerful characteristics. And it will be done in small or large barrels, plus bottle age for that. Typically, some of the best Taurasi DOCGs are between 10 and 20 years old, and even longer. Yeah, let's talk about these key appellations then. And we're going to talk about Taurasi. And then also I've got one on Aglianico del Taburno as well. So Taurasi, first of all. Now, as we know, Aglianico is important in Campania and typically grown at, for its best examples, at altitudes at about 200 to 600 meters on these cooler sites, which create a longer growing season, thus producing more pronounced and intense complexities. The most important is Taurasi. Now, Taurasi's location in Campania is in the inland area. It is north of Avellino, south of Beneventano, and just to the west of the Apennines. So it's really in all of the foothills that goes towards the Apennines. It's about an hour and a half's drive from somewhere like Naples, for instance, which is to the west on the coast. This red map here is in fact all of the areas that grow Aglianico. These are all the communes that are allowed to produce Taurasi as our style. Okay, let's have a look at some of the key information, key characteristics really about this wine. There is a bottle of Taurasi from the very well-known Fiudi de San Gregorio, Fiudi de San Gregorio, in the picture just to the right-hand side. Now, for Taurasi, it's a minimum 85% Aglianico, but really in practice, they tend to be 100% for the majority of those. Maximum yields are set at 70 hectolitres per hectare. Tends to be sort of in the 40s and 50s for most of them. And the DOCG requires actually 3 years of aging, of which a minimum of 1 must be in wood. The Reserva option is more. It's 4 years total aging, I think, with 18 months in total in barrel, of which 18 months must be in barrel. As mentioned, the grapes are typically picked in October and November to fully ripen the skins and the pips, very importantly, and of course the grapes themselves. And the wines will go through typically fairly long macerations, around 20 days or more, in French oak barriques, or as in the past, and with some traditionalists, in large botti, so Slavonian casks. The wines typically are very good to outstanding, mid-price to premium price, with some super premium ones. And really, the 2 key areas for Taurasi are really Italy itself and the US of A. But you will find, of course, people interested in it in places like the UK, Canada, and Japan as well. So that's the most famous, the most premium example of Aglianico. So that was Taurasi. That's that area here we've just been identifying. And now we're going to go into the Beneventano area, where in the southern section we have a place called Taburno. And you'll see there's a bottle here of La Fortezza, Aglianico del Taburno. So this is another DOCG. So it's in that sort of southern central section of the Sannio. stretching between the eastern foothills of the limestone Taburno Massif. So Taburno is a mountain massif just here, very close to the city of Beneventano. The highest concentration of vineyards is found on the hills in the northern part of the appellation, around a village called Torrecusso, and the Calore River bisects this half of the wine growing area in Taburno. Typically about 200 to 400 meters of altitude here. The hills in the southern half of Taburno tend to be cooler, and the vineyards are at higher elevations, making more structured and aromatic wines. Most of the appellation is on clays and sandstones with some volcanic material. And it's the same law in terms of grape variety, 85% minimum of Aglianico, but most of them are 100% varietal. And the wine must be aged for a minimum of 2 years. Well worth seeking out, certainly for more affordable examples of Aglianico from Campania, from Taburno. Okay, so there are other Aglianicos available, certainly across more wider DOCs and IGTs. Do look out for those as well. Please do join me for the next video looking at the white grape of Greco, and of course going through its history, etymology, key characteristics, and its appellations. Once again, any comments, questions, or concerns, please get in touch. You can do so by commenting on this video. But before I actually do wrap up, I want to show you a quick Google Earth video of this area, because I just remembered just at the last moment to really show you this zone. So let's put this into perspective with a lovely Google 3D Earth video. Here is the Campanian autonomous region that we're zooming in on. There you go. We're going to look at some key places, and of course then on to Taurasi, how it looks. Here we go, looking at Vesuvius, which of course is an important geographical landmark. Remember, erupting in 79 AD and covering places like Pompeii in ash, which really kind of captured a moment in time for us to understand the history of the area. So that's Vesuvius. That's actually coastal. Remember, we're going inland here to the foothills of the Apennines, and we are looking at Taurasi, DOCG, sitting just north of Avellino and south of Beneventano. And here is a little bit of a view of how it looks. Remember, most vineyards sitting at about 200 to 600 meters with good altitude. The Aglianico grape, remember, is a minimum 85%. Typically 100% is used, with extensive aging both in barrel and in bottle, making some of the most complex expressions. To the north, remember, we have this Taburno Massif, and this is where we find, that's just to the west of that picture, Aglianico del Taburno, which is important for more affordable expressions of Aglianico, grown at around 200 to 400 meters. Same rules applying in terms of the grape variety, but making slightly more powerful expressions of Aglianico. There you go. That is the presentation complete. So thank you very much for your time and attention. Please do join me for the Greco video. And if you do find yourself in the United Kingdom, then please come and check us out, either at one of our wine schools or wine bar, potentially for a class, a glass, or a bottle. I've been Jimmy Smith. Goodbye.